Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast for military and veterans. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, and provide value and solutions to help make life more abundant. All right, guys, thanks so much for stopping by for another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. Today's guest is Jay. He grew up in Napa Valley, California, and he states that it gave him a valuable perspective on life. His father, working in agricultural fields, showed him that hard work and diligence in the fields produced the finest grapes for the crush. He learned how sweat and calluses could result in a fine wine that would bring people from all over the world to enjoy. As his father put in long hours, learning his craft, going above and beyond, and climbing the ladder from laborer to manager, he saw how dedication and determination could change someone's life and the lives of those around them. These life lessons instilled a humility and strong work ethic in him that guides him now for the rest of his life. In 2009, Jay joined the United States Navy in order to serve his country and see the world. There were many challenges, but nothing that hard work, determination, and persistence could not overcome. It was an honor and privilege, he states, to serve for 12 years, and he is deeply thankful for all the amazing experiences that came with it. He says he feels blessed to plant his roots on Whidbey Island and raise his family in such a beautiful place, and he looks forward to helping others plant some of their own roots here and cultivate a life that they love. Jay, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you for inviting me. And it's a pleasure to speak on your show. But so I'm Jay. Like Rachel said, I'm from the Napa Valley originally, if nobody knows where that's at. That's by the Bay Area in California, in San Francisco Bay Area. So yeah, I did. So my father was in the agricultural business. My entire family actually is in the agricultural business. And so when I finished high school, that's what I thought I was going to get into. But I was kind of a troublemaker. I didn't follow rules. I didn't like rules. I didn't want to get stuck in a particular place that I'd been my entire life. So at the age of 19, I decided to enlist in the U.S. Navy. I'd done a little bit of college up to then, but wasn't really serious about it. So I just said, let's give it a shot and see what happens. So I enlisted in the Navy, 2009. I left August. I initially had a contract for a rescue swimmer contract, a SAR contract. In school, I went to school in Pensacola, Florida, and it was great. The Navy up to that point was amazing, and I learned a lot. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and I ended up getting booted from the program, and I became an undesignated airman, where I was sent to Lemoore, California, to CAG 11, and I served as their pup. Is what they would refer to me as, and that was just pretty much the coffee guy, like go get the coffee, take the trash out, whatnot. But those people actually helped me a lot because at that point I had no guidance. I was pretty young. I had no idea what I was doing with my life, and I had a lot of opportunity. So I used the time, I utilized it. I got an associate's in just general studies, and I was the only airman in the building. So there was like 40 chiefs and 40 officers or whatnot. And so they all like really looked out for me and they helped me grow. And that's where I met a lieutenant commander who taught me about, the stock market. And then we gave it a shot to try to go intel officer and all this stuff. Ended up taking the college entrance exam. I forgot what it's called, the SATs or something that I needed to apply for the program. My math was shit, so I didn't score high enough. So it was a wash once again. And so then I became a gunner's mate. I struck for gunner's mate. I became a gunner's mate, and I headed on to LHD-8 Macon Island. And cool people I met along the way. a lot of lessons learned. I there was one story in particular where and I know some people know what I'm talking about, but there was one story in particular where I was given a counseling shit. It's a funny story now thinking back, but I don't know if you guys know what ospreys are. The B-22s. They're birds. They're aircraft that fly like helicopters. They take off like helicopters, and then the propellers move and they fly like planes. And I got in trouble because I was sitting on the catwalk eating chips, and the wash from the props ripped the bag out from where I had put it and dragged it onto the flight line and just scattered all these chips everywhere. And they shut down the flight ops. And it, but because I was so new, I didn't know that we weren't supposed to eat while you were on watch or whatnot. And so they wanted my head, but in the end, I got a counseling chit and said maliciously tried to take down B-22 with a family size bag of chips. and, and actually, one of my buddies to this day still calls me Chips. So it's funny stories, funny memories. But anyways, moving forward, I didn't know much about once I became a gunner's mate. I didn't know about looks and like career wise and all that stuff. So when it came time to reenlist, I hadn't put in for my looks. I had missed my looks. I had a career counselor that came up to me and said, "Hey man, you missed all your looks, so you're not going to be a gunner's mate anymore. If you want to stay in the Navy, you can either be a cook or you can be the guy who drives the boat." And I said, I don't want to make minute rice in 58 seconds, so I'm good, and I don't want to drive the boat. I'm all good off that. So I became an airframer, and I didn't know what that was at first. I was like, "What is this airframer FTS?" They said, "Oh, well, you'll just be working in some building, like teaching some digital classes to reservists on the weekends." And I said, "Oh, that sounds cake." Up to this point, I've been working real hard and working long hours, and I've been on the boat. I've been ship's company up to this point, and it was an experience for sure. A young man's experience, definitely not something that you want to continue to do. So I said, "Okay, I'll give it a shot." Next thing you know, I'm out in San Diego at Score Debt, and we're working 18-hour days on the flight line. And once again, they got me. They got me. Like, I'm working as a mechanic, fixing these helos that break down constantly, running out missions out of San Clemente with like the best folks that I have met in the Navy so far, almost like family. There, I learned a lot. I learned a lot, but not just about the Navy, but I learned a lot about people and friendships and bonds. And there was good, there was bad, there was ugly. Um, there was people that to this day, like, we still talk, and we still talk about all the stuff that we did while we were there. It was good stuff. But I after I left there, um, that was like the only command that I had that was like that in particular. Like, the people were beyond amazing. So when I left, I came to VP 69, and it was a completely different format, completely different type of organization. And at this time now, I'm working on planes that are in their like they're old planes. They're real old planes. So we're doing this, and I'm going through a lot of issues that had culminated at this point. I had trouble with my marriage, and I wasn't being that good of a father, and a lot of other things that had happened along the way. And so now this was supposed to be like a fresh start. We're on Whidbey Island, away from everything. This beautiful island. There's nothing to do. There's no party scene. There's it's just a place that makes it easy to just focus on what's around you. And that was family. So it ended up not working out. I ended up getting divorced, and along with that, I ended up becoming a single father. My kids stayed with me full time, and then life hit. So I was doing the Navy thing full time, and I'm doing the parent thing full time, and I had never done that before. So now it was rough. It was rough. I was still working a lot. I had two small children that I had to take care of. I had to, the whole school thing, the homework thing, feeding, all that stuff, day in, day out, and I was exhausted. But the Navy doesn't stop. The Navy doesn't stop. You keep going. You're still working. You still got missions to meet. There's still criteria that you got to make up for. And I think at some point I fell into a really deep depression. I felt really alone, and I was struggling. I was struggling every day. But fortunately for me, the saving grace was that I had those kids, because if I didn't have those kids, I wouldn't have felt it at that moment that I would have had something to like really live for. Um, but because I was by myself, I was alone, and I was responsible for them. They were the reason that every day I was able to get up and you put one foot in front of the other and just try to make it to the end of the day. And then thinking back now, like that doesn't seem very fair to them. And but it is what it is. And I have to move on from how it was, and I wanted to progress. But anyways, looking forward, I decided at some point that I was going to get out, and it was almost 2 years from the end of my contract, and I said, at this point, I've done everything that I I had put my best foot forward and done my best in the military up to this point, and I didn't feel that I was going to continue to move forward. And there were goals, there were things that I had set out when I joined the military that I wanted to accomplish that I did not accomplish. There were a lot of things that I did do. I ended up getting a BA from the military. Thank you, military. The Navy paid like $11,000 for my bachelor's. I learned a lot of good lessons. I met a lot of good guys, people I consider brothers. But there were other areas that were lacking. Um, I don't want to say that there's bad leadership and there's good leadership in any organization that you come to, and I don't want to put it on the military that I didn't learn this or that. And it just came to realization recently, as I was talking to my life coach, that all the decisions that we make and all the things that we do are connected, and whether it's like mentally and spiritually, and all that transcends into the physical and the emotional. And it was really interesting. It wasn't until so up to this point in the military, like the last year, I'm like sweating every day. Like I'm the most unhealthy I've ever been in my entire life. I'm overweight. I'm smoking a pack a day. I'm drinking Red Bulls out the Yahoo. And I'm like throwing up from like sheer anxiety, just because I can't make it through the day without the stress just eating me alive. And so I was always waiting for like this other foot to drop. And I couldn't deal with it anymore. So I decided I was going to get out. Like 2 years before I got out, I said, I made a decision. And I up to this point, I'd been working my tail off, and I enlisted in this program. It was called Skill Bridge. And Skill Bridge allowed me to still be in the military, but work for a future employer. So I would be an intern, technically. So what I did was I reached out to one of the brokerages here in town, reached out to the owner. We had a conversation, and they were like, "We'd love to have you." And they helped me with the paperwork. They routed all the paperwork up. I had to prove to the chain of command that I was, worthy of this endeavor. I worked really, really hard, and in the end, they gave me the go ahead, and I was able to leave 60 days prior to my terminal leave beginning to come do this program to learn real estate. So when I got out, I was still in, but I wasn't in because I was still getting paid by the Navy. I still fell under the UCMJ. I still, there were still standards that had to be held, but yet I was like a civilian working a civilian job, right? And then the job wasn't 9 to 5. It was completely different. I really didn't have a boss. So it was completely on me. The real estate game was you're your own boss. This is your business type deal. And that was completely new to me. So I remember waking up and like getting there 8 o'clock on the dot, and I thought, man, I'm late. Like I'm probably gonna get yelled at. And then nobody walks in until like 9:30, and it was only a few people. And I remember asking like, so what time? Like what time am I supposed to come in? What time? What day? Like what's the schedule like? And to be told, you don't have to come in. You don't get paid hourly. This is your business. You whatever effort you put in is what you're gonna get out. So it completely changed or it didn't change anything, but it blew my mind that I had this freedom. And this is freedom that you're not used to in the military. I remember being in the military and like you even have to ask to be like, hey man, like we've been working 10 hours straight, like let's go get something to eat. And people saying, hey man, no, we got missions to make. We don't have time to eat. Go to the Gidunk, that's the store, and go grab a snack and wolf it down and get back to work. Um, and I just remember walking around like real dirty, like covered in hydraulic fluid and oil, and getting yelled at. Hey shipmate, what are you doing? Why do you look like that? Be like, I work hard. That's why. And I remember like, well, you need to set a better standard or whatnot. So that's just the way it was, and that's the way of the world, right? You can never make everybody happy. But in the military, it's a lot. I don't want to say more difficult, but what is difficult is this fine line that you have to walk, where there is a ranking structure, and the people that are above you, I don't want to say that they think they're better than you. I don't want to say that because that may not be true, but some people do. Some people think that the rank uh, makes them like whatever higher than you, and they are, right, in a sense they are. In the military they are, but once I got out and I saw I'm equal to everybody, and it doesn't matter whether they've been doing this for 40 years or they've been doing it for 6 months. Everybody demands the same respect, and everybody demands to be treated the exact same. So that was completely different, and I had to really realize that, because it's easy in the military, like where you belong because of your rank, and you kind of know like this is how they would always say, like, stay in your swim lane. And you'd be like, well, this is my swim lane, this is what I'm responsible for, and nothing more and nothing less. And you knew where your place was. So coming out, there was this confusion, of like, where is my place in the world? And then I started to really realize that all that was just a construct in my mind, that these things that had happened, uh, in these organizations, the way they were structured, like, since I had joined when I was a young man, I was 19, and now I'm in my 30s. I had scoped my entire life around this structure. So getting out, it was like, what do I do? Um, and they say nobody's going to come help you. No one's going to tell you to go to the gym. No one's going to tell you to lose weight. No one's going to tell you to hit the books and study. No one's going to tell you anything. So for the first, I'm to be honest with you, the first couple of months, I didn't do anything. I was still in this deep hole that I was trying to get out of. I think they call it, in some circles, they say that's a level 1 energy. It's a depression. It's where you need to heal, and you don't want to do anything. You don't want to move. You want to just stay in your cave. You want to hide under your blankets, and you just want to sleep. And sometimes you want to curl up into a ball and you want to die, because it would just seem so much easier, right? And so as time went by, I started to heal, and the days started to fly by. And since now I had this rest period, I began to kind of start to peek my head out and be like, what's going on around here? Like, what is this new environment? What is this new world that I'm in? And I'm a pretty curious guy, right? So I always jump in with 2 feet. So once I felt that I wasn't draining, like I wasn't like I would say it like a car just leaking oil. It's a bad thing, right? So I felt like that rickety old car just leaking oil all over the place. So you can barely get it to start. And when it does start, like you don't know if it's gonna die on you. You don't know if it's gonna, turn back on. Um, that kind of deal. So that's kind of how I felt. And then after this rest period, I feel like I had been a little repaired. And then I started to realize, because I was now in this different environment, I was being told like, Jay, you're thinking in a survival mentality, and this job demands a thriving mentality. And to be honest, now that I think about it, I don't know if you could use a thriving mentality in the military. Maybe you could. Maybe it would be really hard. You would have to be incredibly strong and very well disciplined to do it. I'm sure it's possible. But to me, I didn't see it that way, right? And then again, like my perspective is ever changing. So to be honest, I wasn't a survival mentality. I had used tools like paranoia. I was suspicious of other people. I didn't trust anybody. And to now come into a business, of trust, where you have to build trust with people and you have to network and you have to build this foundation where you want to work with other people, was different. So what I decided to do was to learn, what is this thriving mentality? What is this this mindset of there's more than enough to go around. So instead of being used to, to the survivalist mentality of like, I have to fight for every slice of pie that I want, it was like, there's more than enough to go around. Instead of being in competition constantly with my peers, my coworkers, which we are, we're all independent contractors, and we all own our own businesses, and we are always competing against each other, right? But if you change the mentality to there's more than enough, there's more than enough people out there that we can help. You have clients, I have clients, there's more than enough clients to go around. And you start to think about it, the whole world starts to change, because you start to think there is more than enough. I don't have to fight. And then you start putting those tools back in the box because you don't need them anymore. You say, I don't need to be fearful every day. I don't need to have this anxiety every day that something bad is going to happen, because now realistically thinking about it, nothing is probably going to happen. And then I started to put these tools back in the box, and I started to realize that these tools, that I wasn't using the tools, that the tools were using me. And I started to realize that I was being led, like I wasn't in control of my life, even though we all are in control of our lives, but I wasn't the one controlling the things that I was doing. I was allowing my fear and my anxiety to make the decisions for me, and to lead me down the path that it did, instead of taking control and realizing that they are tools that we need, depending on where you're at. These are tools that are going to keep you alive, but you need to use them, not the other way around. And then recently, I started learning about the different energy levels, and I don't quote me on this, but one was depressed, don't want to do anything. 2 is angry, just mad. 3 is I want to win. Like, I'm going to make it about me, and I don't care about you, and I'm going to make sure that I win in this competition. And then 4 is we both win. We both come up with a situation where you and the antagonist, or whatever, the person, your client, you guys both win. And then 5 is like a partnership, and then 6 is like creativity, like where artists and people like that live. So anyways, and I started to understand that okay, we're not going to stop, we're not going to stop uh, being human beings. We're not going to stop feeling the things that we feel. We're not going to stop being angry. We're not going to stop being sad. We're not going to stop being depressed. But these are all things that we have to go through so we can learn and so we can grow. But you have to realize that there's a reason that you're feeling that way, right? And that you have to ask the question, why am I feeling this way? So why am I? And then, this is something I was talking about earlier this week. When I get angry now, the questions needs to be, why am I angry? And how can I use this anger to elevate my vibrations or my energy to the next level? And then we go to level 3, like, well, I want to make sure that I win this situation. But then you start thinking level like 5, level 6 energy, and you start using those tools, and then you bring yourself to level 5, and next thing you know, like you're working flawlessly with other people, even if they have an issue with you. And so that was something that I had never learned before. That was something that was a tool that I could have definitely used in the military, 100%. And I don't regret it. Like, it's hindsight 2020. It is what it is. But it's definitely a tool that I wish I had in my pocket, so I would have been able to deal with situations differently. And instead of being a level 2, like being angry, or a level 3, like making it about me, that I could have learned to always look for the win-win situation, and to learn to work with others. And even if others are at a lower vibration than myself, to now learn how to pull those people up, and maybe even like pull them up to your vibration level, and maybe even go further and continue to climb with them to another level, right? So I know it's kind of confusing, but once you get the concept down, it makes a lot of sense. You follow so far, Rachel? Makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think your story is incredible. And did you have any more you wanted to share? Because I wanted to just touch on something really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you being a male in the military, I know there's a lot of talk about females in the military and the culture for females, but I know, being a male, it's a very male dominated field, but I kind of, from an outside perspective, get the sense that it might be harder for a lot of males to really express how they're feeling or when they're struggling, just because of kind of that good old boys club mentality, or just being a male and maybe the way that you were raised or others around you were raised in the culture. Did you ever feel like, being a male, that it was harder for you to really express what you may have emotionally needed when you were in the military, strictly because of your gender?
That's a good question. So I could say yes, definitely, right? Well, at least for myself, I can answer for myself that I would have probably said that I was like an alpha male, and that I'm made of stone, and that working those long hours, and taking like the abuse, and I was like, oh, that's what makes me stronger, that's what makes me better, and that I can go without complaint. I have this thick skin that I developed, right? Because, to be honest, I took a lot of shit. Like, a lot of people threw a lot of stones at me for a long, long time. And yeah, like, of course, yes, you do develop a thick skin, but but the reality is that, for myself, I just buried a lot. I buried and buried and buried a lot of stuff that I didn't want to deal with. And then, and I know that it added to other issues, and, and it didn't help my marriage. It didn't help me become a better father. And I think that if I would have, stood up for myself a little more, and spoke my mind, and I think that if I would have dealt with my emotions, in a healthier way, obviously in the military there is a culture of like just drinking until you don't even care, or whatnot. And yeah, I mean, it's there is, I don't think anybody forces it on you. Nobody says like, oh, like, you gotta, I mean, people say it all the time, right? Like, buck up, right? Just, everybody's gotta suffer. You're not the only one. It doesn't just suck for you, right? So it's not just on one person, and it's not just a group of people. Like, it's everybody individually, but we are in the military, and you definitely, when you come in, you have, or at least I had, this perception of, I need to be tougher than everybody else. I need to make sure that nobody sees a weakness in me, right? So yeah, it is a fallacy, and I think that if we all would have stopped and really thought about it and expressed ourselves in a healthy way and really talked to each other and really loved each other the way we're supposed to love each other. They always talk about this brotherhood, and you have your sisters and you have your brothers. But I really saw that kind of not be as true as I thought it was. I thought that the bonds that we had were like closer, right? And you do have your brothers and sisters, right? But at the same time, we don't respect each other the way that we should. I don't know if you agree with me. It is what it is. That's just my perspective. I do feel like there's a lack of respect, and I do feel like there's always this heavy shroud of like disrespect in a way of talking shit. Like, we all talk shit to each other, and sometimes and we do it sometimes out of love and sometimes out of spite, and we all do it to each other's faces, right? In the military, like, hey, fuck you, oh yeah, blah 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 blah. And we think it's funny, and sometimes it is funny, but I found myself in the middle of constantly making jokes about things that were really deep. We make jokes when people kill themselves on a constant basis, and these are our brothers, and these are our brothers that we served with. And in my time, my 12 years, I saw over a handful of people take their own lives. And you become so insensitive to it. You make jokes, and that shows really like where you are in a mental place. And I think that the military can be, it is working. It is, I would say it's trying to work to be in a better place mentally, right? But there's a lot of things that you are never going to be able to fix because of the way that it's organized. You're organized as one person is above you, and that guy is you don't want to say he's better than you, but that's kind of how it feels. Once you make like those big ranks, and like you're let's say you're an officer versus enlisted, and there's a completely different mindset of I went to college, I don't need to sweep or take out the trash or any of that stuff, which makes sense. But at the same time, when those two people come in and one person went to college and just the other person didn't, but there's this complete disconnect, and be like, dude, this guy's a human being and so is this guy. And there's a complete lack of like, do you not see? And that was my big problem with leadership is there was a complete disconnect between the people and the treatment, and it was, to me, if real leadership was, showing up first, leaving last, making sure that your people were taken care of. And understand it's the military, there's always a mission that needs to be completed. But if your people they're not up to par, shit's not going to get done, and it's not going to get done correctly. Right. So we just like sweep. Since we're always have this high tempo, we're just sweeping all these problems under the rug. We're just sweeping these sexual assaults under the rug. We're sweeping all these assaults under the rug. We're sweeping all these problems. People are struggling. I've seen people say, hey, I'm struggling. I can't do it. And I've seen them say, hey, get it together. Get it together. Like, people are relying on you. There's no time to be weak. There's no time to slow down and pondering your feelings. And they're right. It is the military, right? So there's aspects that are never going to change. We're always going to do the most with the least amount, right? We're always going to work ridiculous hours with the least amount of manpower and with the smallest amount of resources. I mean, that's at least how it was for me.
A couple things. Number one, 12 years is a long time. And so I was curious if you saw like a downward trend or an upward trend in these areas when it comes to culture over the time you served. Because I know there were massive changes. I joined in 2015, and I
Yeah.
know there were massive changes that took place in the military around the time that I joined. And so I'm interested to hear from your perspective if you felt that there was ever just a shift in the culture or if it's
Right.
just kind of been the same the whole time.
Yeah. No, and you actually will hear this like when you ever talk to vets that are older than us, like people that retired in the 80s, people that retired in the 70s. They'll say like, "Oh, thank God I got out when I did because the military was changing." It's always changing, right? I remember when I came in, it was still okay that your supervisor would put their hands on you. Like they would choke you out, or if you like mouth off, like they'd punch you in the face. It happened. And at that time, like, because I was so new and I had this perspective of the military of like rough, tough, like the manly men, right? That it was okay. That you would tell people, hey, people would say to me, like, hey, you're a fucking piece of shit, like blah, blah, blah. Even if it's a joke. And I'd be like, oh, ha, ha, it's so funny. And it's like we're just constantly like tearing each other down, right? But is there a downtrend? I think yes and no, because towards the end, like you never saw that kind of thing. Like you never saw people physically putting their hands on each other, right? That was a definite line in the sand, right? And then yeah, it kind of turned into like, hey, you can't say this or you can't say that. Like you can't say, hey, go kill yourself. Like you can't say these kind of things anymore. But what I also saw were people started to take, I want to say people also became more sensitive, right? So it was like if you said back in the day, hey, dumbass, right? And then I get all butthurt. Oh, you can't say that anymore. And then let's say that now you'd be like, oh, hey, dummy. And now it's still like the same amount of butthurt, but to me, there's like a huge difference in that, right? But there may not be to other people. Other people may be like, that's the exact same thing, right? So I did see that things uh, became more. You had to walk around like carefully, like on eggshells type deal, right? Because I remember a lot of things that were said to me, and then things that I had said uh, that got me in trouble, and I was like, wow, it never dawned on me that I would ever get in trouble for saying something like that, right? Um, so it's always changing, and it's going to continue to change. But like I said, I don't ever see it becoming like a hey buddy buddy type organization, because it's not meant to be, right? If the day they can replace us with robots or monkeys, they will. You know, that way they don't have to deal with us anymore and all our complaints.
The other question that I had, what would your, I guess, solution be? Because you said that, there's things that don't change. And I kind of agree with that to a point. Um, because I think that if there's things that are maybe concrete and can't change, then there's always some outside of the box solution to at least make quality of life better. Because if service members are in an environment where mission has to get done, feelings have to be put aside, what would your solution be to make sure that service members feel supported through a stressful work environment?
Yeah, yeah, I think that well, the solution is it's a solution, but it'll never happen because you have to take mission and people's personal well-being are two completely different things, right? And I don't think that you'll ever find well, at least for me, I don't know, like there might be a bridge that connects the two, right? But I don't know if there'll ever be a time in the military where you will you will be like, okay, let's take a, and they do, you know what, I've seen it done, like especially when somebody takes their lives, they'll say, let's take a break, let's take the next couple of days and just mentally reset ourselves, right? I have seen that, But I wonder if we did that, and I do see it, like when people mess up, they kind of they start to like say, hey, let's take this day, we're going to do training or whatnot. When there's incidents that happen, like somebody got their foot ran over, or they messed up a job that they did on the aircraft, and it could have potentially cost somebody's life. And like like these serious possible mishaps happen, and people, they do slow down, right? But I think it should be more serious, because I think that the military, there's like I said, there's a disconnect in people of the higher ups and everybody else that works for them, right? And I think that I always said it'd be like, how awesome would that be if the big boss, right, the skipper or whatnot, would walk around, and some do, and they're awesome for this. They walk around and they get to know their people, and they ask these questions. Hey, hey Jay, how was your weekend? How were the kids? And then they don't just ask, like they ask and they care, right? And when you have this type of leadership, that they're involved, right? Because I know there's also this thing that happens where not everything goes up, right? Like we try to squash things, we try to keep things on the lower level, so the higher ups don't find out, right? The chain of command at the top doesn't need to be worrying about these small issues. But then these small issues start to bubble, right? And there start to be all these different people that have all these different problems, and nobody's made aware at the top. It's just the LPO that knows, and the LPO's like, oh, you'll be fine, and he brushes it off, or the chief, and he says, oh, you'll be fine, and he brushes it off. Instead of being like, hey, let's get together and like let's start, looking at these things together and realizing that there is an issue, there is a problem. These people are, and I know they'll say like, oh, we know you're overworked, but we have to keep working, we have to keep going, we have a deadline to meet, right? But at the same time, it's like, if we're a training squadron, right? Are you telling us that you can't take half a day to just check on your people? And then they pawn this off to the one person, right? The LPO. And that dude is like overworked. Who's checking on him? I remember being an LPO. Nobody ever checked on me. It was like, hey, did you check on the people? Yeah, I checked on the people. Like, okay, good. And lead, and then you are that in that place where you're getting torn to shreds, right? And so I don't know if I think the solution is people really give a damn. When people really start to give a damn about each other, I think things can change. When people genuinely care about those underneath them, and really not just like, oh, like, I know him, I know his name, I know he's got kids, but like when you start to really care about your people, and they'll realize that, and they will work their tailbones off for you, right? And you just you'll build a better place, you'll build an organization around genuineness. And I think that, and being kind, not constantly tearing people down. I think that's the other problem, right? That we may not curse at each other anymore all the time. We still do all the time, but not as much. We may not call each other names all the time, but we're still tearing each other down constantly. There's a lot of tear down in the military that could stop. And instead of tear down, like build up, like build. And they always talk about like build your people up. But if the boss doesn't care and he's not willing to do the work, then there's a break in the chain there, right? Because then the people under him, they're struggling, they have no leadership, they have no mentorship, and when they come into that position, that's what they know, and then the cycle continues. Like it needs to be like, if you're a bad leader, and that's the other thing, is when you're a bad leader, they give you chance to be a good leader until something happens, right? And then, oh, what happened? Be like, oh, I don't know. Well, you were a bad leader. That's what happened. And what should have happened was they should have removed you from that position, and they should have put somebody else that was more genuine and that really cared. But that's the thing. Like, it's not about the people. It's about the mission, right? It's about, oh, like, did you make that mission? Yeah. How are your people? They're fine. When they're like struggling, right? So it's like, if you were to put somebody that actually cared and like, did you make the mission? We didn't, not yet. It's going, but we have issues and we need to work this out first. That's never going to happen, right? Not in the military.
And it's crazy. I've seen it before, where a leader steps in to take care of their people and the mission doesn't happen because it's like, the people didn't get sleep or something major. And I've seen it before where the military is like, you should have made this mission happen anyway. So, I mean, it gets to this fine line where, what's really more important. I'm a strong believer that people over profits, regardless of what the organization is, military, civilian. I think if you take care of your people will want to work their ass off for you. And so you bring up a really valid point about how the military makes time for safety stand downs and safety pauses. And so it's not like we can't make time for it. It's just prioritizing it. But obviously, simple things like checking in on people is something that everyone that's listening can start to implement right away. It's not something that the military needs to extensively train on.
Right.
And I hope that people take this and they start to implement these things. And I remember bringing this up at my one of my former commands all the time, just saying like, hey, listen, ask someone how they're doing and genuinely care. Don't just ask me, hey, how are you today? I say good, and then you walk away. Like, I want you to genuinely ask me, how are you today? One-on-one, person to person. And like, I want to know that if I'm having a bad day, I can say, hey, listen, I'm not doing great today. And then have like, a short conversation. But I think that's a great point to bring up. It's something people can easily implement. It doesn't require extensive changes from higher up in the military. And yeah, again, hopefully people take that and do something with it.
Hey, could you imagine if everybody in the organization truly cared about each other? I mean, if you thought about it that way, right? If we did put people over profits, which the military doesn't make a profit, it's not supposed to, but we treat it like a corporation, like an organization that is supposed to. It's modeled that way, but it doesn't make a profit. But if we genuinely cared and we genuinely like we had all those traditions and we had that brotherhood that we were supposed to stand by, if we brought some of that back, and instead of doing these GMTs and standing these safety stand downs where they're just like the check in the box. Did we tell them not to drink this weekend? Check in the box. Instead of being like, hey, everybody good? Does anybody have any plans? You guys gonna party? Like, or if you're drinking, hey, like, why are you drinking? What's going on? And like truly being, but at the same time, nobody really cares that much. And so I think that if everybody cared, which it's never gonna happen, but if it did, the whole organization would change. Because at that point, when people really care, whether I'm feeling down or not, I want to be part of the team. I want to make it happen, and the mission will happen. Because we're in it together.
I 100% agree with you. And I mean, I think it starts with a few people at a time to really change a culture. And I think I 100% think it's possible. It just might take time because we don't know what we don't know. So if everyone's being raised from 18 years old in the military and they're just learning, be a tyrant, tell people what to do, you're a higher rank, they'll listen to you. That's all they know. But if they learn and they take the time to cultivate this practice of checking in on your people and caring, and then that spreads like a wildfire because the military is a very small community. At the end of the day, the people who do 20 years are few and far between. And I definitely think that it's something that could change. It's just people have to care enough to want to make those changes. And the more I talk to people that are in the military or have gotten out of the military, I think at their core, people do want to see changes happen. I think some people just don't know how to take that first step. So I think it's great that you brought up that point of something just simple that everyone can do, regardless of if you're an E1, an E8, E9, or an officer, just simply asking someone, hey, how are you doing today? And just being genuine. Do you feel that your experience overall, when it comes to your mental health in the military, do you feel it was more positive or more negative?
I've thought about that a lot, right? And I like initially I wanted to say, of course, it's been negative. It's all been negative, right? But the more that I'm learning, the more that I came to realize it was because I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the tools to turn the negative things that were happening to me, or that the negative things that I was bringing into my life. I didn't have the tools to turn those things into good things, and to view it from a positive perspective. And I don't want to say they were supposed to teach me, or they were supposed to give it to me, because the reality is that we're all growing as human beings, and if we want to grow, it's on you. It's up to you. And if you want to learn, it's up to you. So if you want to be stuck in one spot, you can, and it's completely up to you. It's your decision. But now that I'm just realizing now, and it kind of sucks that it sucks, but it's a great thing, right? That I can change the perspective, and the changing perspective changes everything else, right? So if I become more positive, and I become kinder, and I treat those around me with kindness, and I bring positivity to the organization, then hopefully those people become more positive, and they start to bring more light into the organization. And this kind of brings me back to a question that was asked to me. I remember I was hanging out with my brother and his girlfriend, and they were talking, and they were kind of like hippie a little bit. And they're like all love, peace, and stuff. And at this time, I was like a cynic, right? I was like, the world's a bad place. Everybody's evil, blah, 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 blah. And then you guys are so naive, right? So I'm like chastising them, like, oh, you think that it's just love, peace on earth. But that's just a silly, ideal that doesn't exist. It never will. And then his girlfriend, now his fiance, asked me if she said, why does it have to be why? She said, why are you so negative? And I said, well, because I'm in a negative place, surrounded by negative people. It's a toxic environment. I can't help myself that I'm this way. And she said, but why can you not help it? Why do you not have a choice? And in that moment, she made me realize, like, damn, she got me. Like, old girl got me. She's right. I do have a choice. I don't have, she's like, why do you have to be dark just because everybody else is dark? You can't bring light to the organization. Like, you can't be the light in the dark. And she got me there. And it's absolutely true. And I think a lot of us try to just say, oh, it's because it sucks that I suck, or that I'm shitty. But the real truth is that it's our perspective that sucks.
That being said, it sounds so simple once we learn these tools, right?
Yeah,
About like, it's so easy. Like, it's just a choice that I make of perspective. But like I said earlier, we don't know what we don't know. So, I mean,
Right.
obviously an 18, 19-year-old, even like me, I joined when I was 22, might not know these things, especially in a stressful environment. So is there anything that you think when you were in the military would have made things better for you when you were in that negative mindset?
So I kind of thought about this too. I think, how we have classes on like everything, classes on, hey, don't throw a frozen turkey in the oil and inside the house, because you'll burn the house down. Don't go water sports without the proper safety. And it's always like some safety stuff, right? And no one has ever tackled the other side of it. What if you did bring somebody in? Like, what if you did bring a life coach in who asked a series of questions? And it doesn't have to be like, let me hear everybody's story, because nobody has time like that, right? But what if somebody came in and asked a series of questions, and like really left everybody pondering? But like, if you think it's so bad, or if you're having a negative experience, why is that, and how can you change it? And that's like one of the biggest things that I was never asked. Uh, it was just like the question was always why, like, why do you feel this way, why? And that's such a dangerous question now that I think about it, right? The question why it's so broad, and it can be so vague, and it can lead you down a rabbit hole that leads nowhere. But instead, the question should become how. If you feel this way, how can you change it? If you think this way, how can you change the perspective, right? And so we should ask why, but we should also ask how, right? And I think if they did that, and they gave like right when I came in, I was a kid. I was 19 years old. I didn't know anything. And and my emotions ran high. I would get angry really, really quick. And I would be prone to do dumb stuff because I was a kid. I didn't know any better. And I'm sure that and we all try to like grow up. We're all going through the same experience of life. But if they would have brought somebody in to be like, why are you guys doing this? Or why do you think this way or whatnot? Or if they taught somebody, right? They have counselors there, I think, in every squadron. But nobody's asking these like deeper, like reflective questions. It's always motivating. It's always about motivation, right? We got to motivate the folks. But the thing is, motivation goes away. Like as soon as you're not motivated anymore, you're not motivated anymore, right? And there has to be something deeper, like a deeper question that makes everybody look inside themselves and be like, I want this to be a good organization. What can I bring to this organization? And that's probably the other thing, right? We all needed to learn personal responsibility and giving and being a part of something instead of just, I'm a part of this, I'm a cog in the wheel. And I'm not going to say everybody thinks like that, but I certainly did. I'm just a cog in the wheel. What I do doesn't matter. If I die, it doesn't matter. And I did see that, right? Somebody died and we just kept working, right? We would just, replace the ant that passed, that's the way it felt. So, yeah, thinking about it, I wish I would have asked the deeper questions or had somebody ask me deeper questions. And I know like the upper chain of command, or what we call like the middle management, right? I think they're in a good place to learn these tools and to share these tools with their people, because they're the ones that are supposed to be asking the questions. They're the ones that are supposed to be going around to their people and being like, "What's going on?" And what is going on? Why is it going on? How can you change it? Instead of just hey, buck up, man. I went through it. It is the way that it is. There's always something better. Then there's always a better way to reach people. Yeah.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. Final question for you. If
Yeah.
you were in charge of the Navy, what would you implement to make things better?
I would make it less complicated, and that by what? And I don't know about the other world. I was never an officer, right? But in the enlisted world, I mean, less complicated as you're there to do a job, one job. You're not there to be a college student. You can certainly go to college, but you're not there to become a college student. You're not there to volunteer. You can certainly volunteer, if you want to. And there's all these check boxes that we have to do, right? You know what I'm talking about, like evaluation wise and all that. And I would say focus on being the best at your job, and focus on, and I would probably implement leadership, some type of leadership classes. They used to have this mentorship program in the military. I don't know if you remember that, but when you came in, they would give you a mentor, and that guy was always supposed to look out for you. And so what I would do, I would pick the guy that didn't like me to be my mentor. And he was always like a higher rank than me, right? So that way he would teach me and be like, I don't like this about you. And it would always be like something, it wouldn't be like my personality or anything. It would be like something like that I did, or that I didn't do, or something. He probably thought that like I was being disrespectful or something, but it was just perspective miscommunication, right? And so I learned how to communicate, and I learned how to talk to people, and I learned how other people perceive me. So these are all good things to have. Like, to have a mentor and have a coach is great, right? And they did have this program in the military. Last time I heard, they didn't have it anymore. They did away with it for whatever reason. Maybe there wasn't enough mentors to go around, or maybe people just didn't care enough to teach and help other people come up in a responsible, like, moral way. So it's all about numbers now, right? It's when you read an evaluation, it's always about so and so did X number of things and saved X number of money, and he volunteered and he walks on water and stuff. But it's so disconnected. I think that I think probably the other thing I would change is the way that we make rank. Right. I really like the way the Marines make rank, and it's by personal recommendation, by your peers or your higher ups. And if they see you kicking ass and you deserve it, then sure. But if I've met so many people they're just like, I'm just filling in the checkbox. Like, I got to do it so I can make the next rank. But they're just not good people. And then they make it, right. And they're so like absolved, and they're so absorbed in themselves. It's all about them. It's all about being in the next spot. Like, it's not about the responsibility. It's not about the people that you can help. It's sometimes it's about like the power and and stuff like that. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jay, for your time, and thank you for getting on here and sharing value. You shared some really awesome stuff.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen in today. Each week, I'll be bringing you value in the mental health space and its direct impact on service members and veterans. If you feel you personally got value today from this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a 5-star rating and review and share this to your audience. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.